Hey, it's that time of year again. Nights are cold and dark, you've had your fill of Christmas pud, and you're probably getting ready for a big night to ring in the new year. So while you're getting yourself sorted, why not listen to me talk about everything I've played this year, and hey, drop your faves from the year down below as well. Doesn't matter if they came out this year, just if you played them. Let's go. We'll kick off 2025 with one of the purest delights a person can hope to experience. It was like being a teenager again for me in the aftermath of Christmas 2024 as I sat down and played through a brand new Dragon Ball game. I always knew of the series through its roots within much of pop culture, but didn't truly experience it until I was a teenager and met a few friends over Skype. I'd go on to binge the original series during the summer of 2011 and from there would pick up a couple of the games. Like I mentioned last year when discussing Burst Limit, Raging Blast was my jam, and when they announced this game, Sparking Zero was effectively going to function as a new entry in the Budokai Tenkaichi series, which Raging Blast also mirrors, I knew I had to pick it up. Sparking Zero carries on from the traditions established in those previous games, letting you play through the stories of Z, now stretching all the way through Super, featuring what-if scenarios to show you some alternative takes on iconic moments from throughout the series, as well as having a ginormous roster of characters. I really appreciate how they handled the recap of the events of Z through to Super within this game compared to other titles, as the difficulty of each encounter throughout the episode mode is dynamic. What this means is, 1, you need to visit the training mode to refresh yourself and understand how the controls have changed if you're like me and are returning from like 10 years ago without having played another one of these since. They've added a lot to the control scheme and makes the fights feel super involved. And 2, the first fight against Raditz is actually built to be really challenging. I love the idea of this. Having fights that were immense challenges for the Z fighters feel like struggles for the player too. This dynamic difficulty also leans the other way though, meaning that the likes of Goku vs Jason Berta or Goku vs Nappa are complete stomps in your favour. Meeting certain conditions within these fights also unlocks alternative story paths. These can span from one cutscene long to entire chains of fights where things pan out completely differently. These can also be triggered by choices made at key points, like if you refuse Piccolo's offer to help Goku in the Saiyan Saga, you have to do the fight with Raditz with Goku, Krillin and Roshi instead. This gives a real authentic feeling to the gameplay, which pretty much has all of the mechanics from the Budokai Tenkaichi games, but really makes you pick your moments when you want to use the likes of command grab, super attacks and even find a moment to charge your ki. The battles here feel really intense and the character variety, as I said, is massive. What also is cool is going through each alternative scenario and character path. Yeah, the story's broken up by characters since some don't participate till later on in the series or aren't involved in certain encounters. And through playing all of this, you'll earn quite a bit of Zenny, which can be used on costumes, stages, characters and music, which for the first time ever includes quite a few tracks for the anime. If you grew up with the 2000s Dragon Ball games, you'll find a lot to love here, with the series that birthed the Arena Fighter still doing it best. And now we go from super to spooky. Silent Hill 2 is a game I've owned for the PS2 for ages just as a part of my collection. I know it's one of the classics, so I just wanted to say I had it with the intention of eventually getting round to it. When the remake came out though, hearing from friends and content creators who are more clued in than I was that this was a beginner-friendly way to experience the game, more akin to Resident Evil 2 Remake, I thought it was a good way to dip my toes in. You always hear about how atmospheric this game and series as a whole is, how they use location, lighting, sound and just vibes to keep you on the edge of your seat, and you never really appreciate how far this goes until you give it a whirl for yourself. Throughout my time with this one, I was tense as hell. I've never had a game make me feel this on edge before. I know some of the key bits that happen in the game and the general message of the story, but how will I get to see and experience them for myself when I'm inching my way forward because there's a howling wind, billowing fog, and my radio is crackling? I love the use of the DualSense in this one, the light on the controller being the only way to keep an active eye on your health until you're at critical damage, and the radio crackling that indicates enemies nearby come directly from your controller this time. Both uses really set me on edge. Having to take my eyes off the screen for a moment to check how I was doing after fights when I'd run out of healing was really neat, because it was a risk I was actively having to choose to take. This was doubled when I was doing this, and suddenly heard the crackling start all over again. I can't count how many times I caught myself frantically searching the screen with my flashlight for the source of the noise after I'd had my attention on the controller or the in-game map, which, fun fact, doesn't pause the game when you've got it up, so again, it's just another risk you have to take unless you're absolutely sure you're safe. Sometimes the crackling can just be these bugs that are easy to deal with, but when you hear it and can't see the source, it sets the tension really, really high. There was a point while I was playing through where I was on low health due to some careless mistakes fighting a boss, and had a big open navigation segment ahead of me where the radio was constantly going off and I was shrouded in mostly darkness. I found the nearest save point and had to take a break because I felt so overwhelmed by that entire situation. That's never ever happened to me before in any game, and it was just so cool that because of the atmosphere and the situation the game was putting me in, that I got to feel that way. I played on standard puzzle and combat difficulty, but still felt dead clever when overcoming obstacles placed in front of me. Puzzles felt really fun to solve, and I felt dead clever, as I said, when I overcame these mental gymnastics. There's your standard find the thing that fits here type ones, and there's a couple of really neat ones which really heavily rely on your environment and force you to really think about and interact with your surroundings. There's a couple of really genuine head scratches in here. Combat was neat, I enjoyed the melee quite a bit, forced me to always be aware of my enemy and what they can do, and if I didn't want to expend precious bullets, which, while I was mostly in plentiful supply of both ammo and healing, there were some more tense sections where both were either running low or completely gone. This is a really accessible way to access a really incredible survival horror game, and I'm really quite excited to jump into the original probably later this year after playing this one, just to see how much more intense it is in comparison. I'd spent January working massively on the Shadow Generations video. I hope you enjoyed that one, by the way. I'm really, really proud of it. I think it might be my best video ever. The reason I had time to do this was because I was in between jobs. The last year was pretty heavy, and if you've seen the previous end of year video, you'll know that I left my job for the sake of my mental health. I was job searching for all of January, using any time there was nothing to apply for to plug away at the video. I told myself I'd be employed by February, and yeah, I was over the moon, as you can imagine. I'd left to bet on myself and find my own happiness, and managed to do so. A very big proud of myself moment. Using what time I had left while some paperwork was processing, I aimed to tackle one of the biggest games in my backlog. As in, it's a game that's quite long, quite high profile, and almost 150 gigabytes. I wanted to free up some hard drive space, so I quickly diverted to Pac-Man World Repack. It was free on PS Plus. I've had the second one in my PS2 collection for a bit. I've had my eye on this one for a while. You can't blame me, really. A nice simplistic one, this. Save the big lad's family from his big robot doppelganger. Yeah, can do. The levels are a really nice length, good for going through normally, but if you miss something, you can barrel through them rather pacey. They're all based on finding collectibles to open doors, and it loves having you do these short little bits of backtracking, with the collectible you need to open the doors and the level usually being a little bit further forward, only like 30 seconds or something. Before having you go back through the section, you literally just played backwards for your reward. Wait to see the bum bounce being one of the main moves, but I enjoyed it enough, gave some good spring to my steps, as did the charge, spin dash things Pac-Man can do, because there's 3 ways to tackle baddies. I didn't really find myself exploring the dot throwing until one level in particular, which I think is in the carnival world. After that, I did find myself using the power a bit more. Speaking generally, Pac's got a good look, feel and weight to him, made jumping and moving feel really satisfying. There's a few levels that stand out from the crowd, but I'd be remiss to remember any of them specifically or by name. But it's nice that every area has one worth keeping in mind. I like how the objective for the design of the game was to translate as much of Pac-Man from the arcade into a platformer, seeing all these classic elements be repurposed as collectibles or extra stages in the case of the mazes was really sweet. That being said, I wasn't incredibly enthusiastic to play a maze every level for 100%, nor was I that big in the slot machine that comes up at the end of every level. The bonus stages were a little bit of a thrill, I guess, and I liked each of the bosses enough, which is cool to say, so yeah. It ain't too deep, but it was a great breather between a horrible game about a man who might not be nice and a 60+ hour RPG, the wait for which was also buffered by Payday 3. The other free game I played Payday 2 and thought, hey, I enjoy this, I want to play more of it, and I didn't. Payday 3 is a game I was very excited to see announced, but then heard nothing about after launch. Even the biggest Payday 2 fans from my friends just never seemed to mention the game, and when they did, it was always regarding how it felt like a bit of a letdown, or was plagued with issues at launch which stopped the game dead in its tracks. When it was released as one of the February PlayStation Plus games, and I expressed interest in giving it a look, a friend of mine described it as a punch in the stomach, which, coming from a long-time fan of 2, is always a great sign. I got round to it with a couple of buddies on and off over the course of the month, and I was dead impressed by how they've improved stealth, which was the style of play I enjoyed most back when I was playing Payday 2. It's no longer this linear process of doing the same stuff for the likes of the bank heists. Instead, it's got far more finesse and tension in the way you do things, having to collaborate with your pals, feeling even more vital in the completion of these jobs. When things get loud, I was also pleasantly surprised with how they'd updated proceedings. Shooting felt more satisfying, and surprising enemy variety kept me on my toes. I won't end this bit by saying I want to keep playing this one for ages like I did with Payday 2 in the 2020 video and then proceed not to commit to it, but I'd be lying if I said I couldn't see it joining our current rotation of multiplayer stuff alongside the likes of Fortnite, Helldivers and Marvel Rivals. I'll be sure to note it in the December portion of this video, but as it stands, yeah, I quite like Payday 3. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth felt like a victory lap. While waiting for some of my documentation to process for my new job, I had what was effectively 2 weeks of holiday completely to myself while all of that was processing. I didn't have to job hunt anymore, but also physically couldn't start my new job yet, so I spent the entirety of the rest of February and the first third of March going through FF7 Rebirth. If you recall from the 2021 end of year video, there's a lot of sequels in this one, isn't there? Gosh. While I enjoyed Remake enough, playing the original both prior to and following Remake really didn't endear me to how it handles Midgar, stretching an atmospheric and effective 6-hour introduction, which then immediately throws you into a wider world, into a 30-hour slog where sequences previously minutes long were stretched into hour-long levels, and the setting and atmosphere is far less in keeping with what 7 wants to establish. It really meant that over time, I've come to not view the remake very favourably when I think about it alongside that original experience. All that being said, when this game came out, all I heard was about how fantastic it was and how it refines the ideas established in Remake to create an effective feeling recreation of the middle 20 hours or so of FF7. I was a lot more optimistic going into this game, and after sinking just over 80 hours into it, yeah, that's exactly what this is. The game picks up immediately where Remake leaves off, offering you Cloud's recount of his time with Sephiroth just prior to the Nibelheim incident as the tutorial for this game. Straight away you can feel the improvements they've made to combat and navigation. Everything feels just that bit quicker than in Remake, with navigation being more diverse than just running around and climbing ladders, with the additions of cliff scaling, grappling, and some context sensitive bits like having you hoover up Mako gas, push obstacles out the way, gravity switching, and running on walls, making areas you explore stand out far more. Combat is also a bit more fast-paced and encourages you to engage with the enemy before deploying your skill of choice or spell to deal additional damage. The game wants you to be parrying and dodging your foes as well, this feeling really satisfying to nail within these faster fights. Brand new to this game, we have moves involving 2 party members working together. This can be in the form of quick little movements or strikes, like Cloud hoisting Tifa into the air while she does a spin kick and can now hit airborne threats, or if you work together with a teammate enough within fights, these smaller moves, healing each other and playing as the other characters for enough time, you can use your ATB gauge to unleash synergy skills, which are more stronger tag team techniques which also have additional effects like increasing stagger or granting unlimited MP for a short time. All of this, which is showcased in the tutorial, is then expanded upon as you level up both as a team and individual, unlocking stat buffs and skills for each member of the party, but also unlocking more synergy techniques as the game goes on. We've got almost double the party members to choose from this time, going from 4 in Remake to 7 in this game, but showcasing the whole party by game's end. Like in Remake, everyone feels unique in their own right thanks to their own signature skills mapped to triangle. Customizing my party, which the game gives you 3 configurations you can fill and switch between in the menus, was really satisfying and meant at certain points everyone, except Kate Sith, got their time to shine. The game also encourages you to use and level up everyone by having certain points where certain parties are forced upon you, giving you the chance to give everyone a go. The only one I didn't really vibe with, as I said a moment ago, was Kate Sith, but I didn't really use him in the original game either, so at least it's consistent. The story does still have those tweaks and curveballs, but is generally far more faithful to the original 7 with some extra moments added in. Like, we actually have to fight the Midgar Soma and see Sephiroth impale the thing, which, while I enjoy the fight, does also do that thing that Remake did where it shows you Sephiroth far more often and it takes away his mystique a little bit. That being said, I suppose for this part of the story, it can be understood more than where he randomly popped up so much in Midgar. It does a really good job of fleshing out the side characters this time round as well, I think, especially in the likes of Corel with Barrett's ordeal there, Kate Sith being a charming little fella outside of his gameplay, Red 13 just being this super endearing little fella, Sid having this link with Aerith and Amam, and Tifa. I'm going to be honest, there were times at which it felt like she was the main character. Poor lass has already been through so much, and by game's end here, it got so much worse for her given where the game ends, and judging where the next game's going to start, this is not the end of her troubles. There's this real chaotic thruple energy to Tifa, Cloud and Aerith, and honestly, I thought it was really, really charming. I also adored the mini-games in this one. Vanilla 7 has quite a few mini-games shoved throughout its experience, and this game takes that and runs with it. There's like a billion of the mini-games here, and aside from like 2 of them, I really enjoyed them all. The side content in general this time is just really, really good. Much more variety than Remake, it fleshes out the wider world a lot better than it too. I would love to say I did absolutely everything, but the final side quests felt like they really wanted me to hit level cap to even stand a chance, and man, I want to play other stuff. This game had my undivided attention for over a month and it's 138 gig. I want to play some other stuff at some point. If you can't tell by the length of time I've spoken about it, I thought Rebirth was phenomenal. Playing the original, compounded with my pre-existing Kingdom Hearts knowledge, meant I was already a big FF7 enjoyer, but this did a really good job of both revitalizing my interest in these remakes and capturing the energy of the original 7 really, really well. I'm really quite excited for the 3rd and final installment in this remake saga now. And while the encore performance from Rebirth is still probably quite a while away, the follow-up to one of my faves from last year felt like the perfect follow-up to such a meaty undertaking like the one I just experienced. Frog Gun was a game I played last year just as things started to go that little bit wrong for me, but nevertheless, I really enjoyed the game and ended up just about 100%ing the thing. The number 10 slot on last year's list was hotly contested and Frog Gun was one of the 5 games vying for the spot, being in the final 2 before I ultimately decided that Ghost Runner 2 was going to be the featured game. It was an excellent little perspective platformer that I tried after seeing and hearing only a little bit about it, but the same can't be said for this follow-up. I've not heard nor seen anything about Frog Gun Encore prior to picking the game up, and as I said, while I love the first game, I really don't understand how this game didn't make more of a splash because it's bloody great. While being more of an expansion that happens to take place after the events of the first game, Frog Gun Encore brings a couple of changes to design and pacing that I hope make it into a hypothetical sequel. While being substantially shorter than the first game, only around 20 or so levels long, Encore doesn't just want to be more of the same, making a couple of changes that go a long way in making things feel fresh. The first tweak is the pulling back of the camera. Everything's a little bit smaller and depth perception is impacted a bit, but you can see more of what's going on in these now wider, larger levels. The size of these new maps is also kept manageable by the second change. Everything is faster this time round. Not too drastically, but certainly a noticeable tweak. This means that while making things feel bigger, the more frantic pace stops things from being too large and making levels too long when coming through them for 100%. They've also made a couple of changes to Renetta's movement capabilities. She's got a double jump this time, giving her extra vertical height, with the trade-off being you lose your ability to use your frog gun until after you land on the ground, meaning you simply can't double jump and grapple past every hazard. They also made the double jump a bit slower compared to everything else, meaning it really is a last resort as it impacts the gameplay speed, which, thanks to this next trick, has increased drastically. You can now jump out of your grapples to fling yourself forward through the levels at a rapid pace. This is nuts for when we revisit levels for the time trials, some of which have pretty strict timings, and with the right grapples and jumps, you can skip out and blast through the major chunks of the level at incredible speeds. It was insanely fun to do this, and I found myself, while playing through the levels the first time for the collectibles, thinking about where would be the best places to pull off these major skips and giant jumps. Pulling off my own little speedrun techs and skips made me feel like a real winner, and the game gets to have its cake and eat it too by being really fun to comb through for 100%, with its precise and balanced platforming, and by being this absolutely class speed game as well. If you enjoyed Frog Gun 1, then give Encore your time and attention, and if you haven't played either, we'll sort it out. I'm sick of this. And if there's a fella who I've come to learn is good at sorting stuff out, it's Isaac Clarke. I knew of Dead Space during its initial run of life, but never bothered to get round to it. PS Plus once again came through for this one though, and after having a friend recommend it as a long-time fan, I thought I'd, at the very least, give it a whirl. Initially, and stupidly, I did let my prior experience with Silent Hill 2 this year taint the early stages of this game for me, remarking to a friend that I thought the atmosphere was nowhere near what I'd experienced in that game. Then I took a second to remind myself that the type of vibe that Silent Hill 2 establishes is not at all what this experience is going for, and from then on, I started to really appreciate the unique things that Dead Space brings to the survival horror game. The mere fact that it's set in space in the far future gives the developers some really cool aspects to draw upon. I loved the fusion cutter as your base weapon. Angling in different ways to hack off limbs felt really satisfying, and seeing the flesh and muscle tissue slowly sever and the loss of different limbs impacting enemies in different ways was really cool. The necromorphs are no joke as well. How quickly they can sneak up on you, especially in the early bits, they caught me a couple times, and the sheer enemy variety by the end was really neat to have to adapt to a variety of scenarios as the game got more intense. Puzzles in this one mainly revolve around your stasis and kinesis abilities, slowing down and moving things around respectively, but then the game begins to mix these powers with things like low oxygen and anti-gravity. It's when the game starts to really make a name for itself. I love the inclusion of sections where you can move more freely with the anti-gravity. It gives a new dimension to puzzle solving and enemy encounters because the free movement also means that they're going to be faster and more direct when they have a go at you. Another modifier they add is power distribution, meaning that even when you restore power to an area after solving a puzzle, you can choose to either say have the lights on or have the oxygen system fully functioning, giving you a choice of either having a time limit to be in the area or being visually impaired when dealing with potential nearby enemies. This one also has a bit of Metroidvania blood in its veins, with collectibles and a couple side quests smattered throughout the game. Hidden within main areas or behind doors you can only open once you've gained high security clearance. What I enjoyed about the collectibles is that while most of the time it's like text or voice logs to exposit lore, they'll also include a little node for you to use to upgrade your base stats or weapons. It's nice that you're incentivized to get these both for completion, game lore, and gameplay reasons. The story progresses well, doesn't outstay its welcome, and aside from the final chapter being basically one big escort mission, I say big as if the chapter isn't the shortest one, I can really say that I did enjoy Dead Space Remake. Just a really good survival horror that I really did have a lot of fun with. What I'm also sick of is having to replace these dang Yu-Gi-Oh games I buy. CX has let me down twice now when needing to track down alternative discs for both Duelist and the Roses and this next game just so I can complete them, or in this case, even play the damn thing. Capsule Monster Coliseum was a purchase made because of the good faith Duelist of the Roses inspired in me last year. I wanted to experience it and see if it was another weirdo Yu-Gi-Oh game I could really come to love. This one takes more from the anime than Forbidden Memories this time, featuring the full cast of important folks up to the end of Battle City. This game also leans a little further away from being a mashup of Yu-Gi-Oh mechanics, instead manifesting more as a traditional tactical RPG. You picking your starting deck based on a tribute, get shown this giant matchup chart of how every attribute interacts and then get told, okay, off you pop. There's some very light tutorialization within the first duel with Joey, but aside from that, you're on your own. There's 5 areas to conquer in this game, each with 5 opponents. All of them as well packing a different deck, representing a different attribute. So you gotta pick the monsters you bring with you carefully to take full advantage of the terrain and where your opponent's weaknesses are. I enjoyed tweaking my monsters from battle to battle, bringing different friends to each fight, my choice of which was bolstered heavily by the shot, in which you spend points earned in duels on new monsters, and the end of duels allowing you to pick up 2 new monsters to defeat it to take as your own. This is similar to the Graveyard Roulette from Duels of the Roses and incentivizes you to wipe out your opponent fully instead of just targeting their idol. You gotta fully consider the different angles you can move in from though, as each monster either has cardinal or diagonal movement and attack range. So, as in any tactical RPG, positioning is super important. Gave me a big bang of Queen's Blood from Rebirth. Monster effects are something I felt was missing, however. They only come into play once your monster begins to level up, so they don't have much presence as Duelist of the Roses or in Yu-Gi-Oh itself. Fusion was also a big miss here. It's my favourite mechanic in Yu-Gi-Oh and a big part of both Duelist of the Roses and Forbidden Memories, so it being absent here, apparently it is in the game but I could never get it to trigger, means that it was just a ginormous miss for me. Also, weirdly, there's a ginormous difficulty spike between I got written here between the last 5 duels, but when I actually played it through, it's not the last 5 duels, it's like the final Pegasus duel, so fight 20 out of 25 or 21 out of 25 is just randomly really hard and the rest are all fine. It's very odd, I don't know, it's a big jump. All in all, I really did enjoy Capsule Monster Coliseum as well. Not quite as much as Duels of the Roses, but what it wants to do, it does quite well. This is one I've had my eye on for a little bit. As we established a few years ago, I enjoyed the Crystal Dynamics reboot of Tomb Raider and as such, I've always been curious to try the original games out. I was intending to ask for the remastered trilogy for Christmas, but forgot. Whoops. Then I spied it reduced from 36 to 15 quid in Smith's, so like, you know, patience is a virtue. I love the vibe, audio, and visuals in this one. Being able to toggle back and forth in an instant, in real time, between the remastered and classic graphics is absolutely mint. The atmosphere within these environments is spectacular, really vacuous and empty, but like in a really good way. These ancient temples and tombs feel really grand to explore, and the areas and puzzles are really something. The way Lara feels to control, though, took a little bit to sell on me, however. I flat out didn't enjoy how the classic tank controls felt. Thankfully though, they had a setting for more modern controls which fit a little bit nicer in my hand. But the environments aren't really built for them, so you have to be a bit more careful, use the walk button and really consider which jump you should use. Now, apparently the Lara's house mode is a tutorial. Whoops. I thought it was a sandbox and just skipped it, so my initial frustrations were a little bit self-inflicted. Later ones though, like the lock-on for shooting not detaching from dead enemies until you stop aiming and shooting, which then impacts your movement and gives enemies more of a chance to get up close and maul you. Human enemies are unrelenting and chew through your health like nobody's business, and if you forget to save mid-level, no autosave, no checkpoints for posterity, then it's back to the start of the level if you miss a jump or get tricked by a trap or eviscerated by your foes. The game is tough, let's not mince words, but once I was more in the groove of thinking through my jumps, being careful to avoid any potential traps and running around and dodging enemies more rapidly, then it did begin to win me over a little bit more. That being said, I wasn't as huge on this one as I thought I was going to be, which is a shame, and at the time of recording, the 30th of May, I haven't actually finished Tomb Raider. I took a really big detour away from it. I am intending to go back to it, so hopefully these thoughts age like milk, and if it appears in the top 10 of this video, you know what's happened. For now, though, I don't know. I don't know if it was for me. Buckshot Roulette is cool as hell. A mate told me it was fun and had multiplayer, and it was £2.50 on Steam, so what the hell? Why not? The strategic elements of item use, combined with having to keep track of the shells used, makes for games where I'm having to use my brain a surprising amount. That's all I can really say, honestly. This one's a lot of fun, especially with some multiplayer. Getting into May, things had finally started to properly settle down after what had been quite a hectic start to the year. Since I'm currently trying to save for a house and my income has changed quite a bit since leaving teaching, I looked to my PS2 collection to see what I wanted to get through, as truthfully, I don't boot the old girl up as often as I would like, and there were a couple of things I either wanted to revisit or experience for the first time. This first one is a revisit. In fact, it's the game that made me want to look at my PS2 backlog. iNinja is this game that I remember from my childhood because I thought it was really cool and had fun platforming and lots of fun gimmick levels, and every time I rented it from Blockbuster, it was really neat. Like, I remembered the whole levels of these reactionary speedway segments, ball rolling, big platforming, the PS2 platformer staples outside of the slide level. Imagine my shock when all of these segments that I remembered were in the first level, which is 2 minutes long. iNinja wants to give you platforming fans in the early 2000s everything you'd want. There's jumping, wall running, forced running segments, ball rolling, turret levels, forced combat, grappling, boss fights that are essentially minigames, stealth, and overly edgy and aggressive protagonists with a whatever attitude, and I feel like I'm probably forgetting some stuff because this game packs it all in. This probably sounds like a bit of an unfocused hodgepodge, and I'm not going to say that it isn't, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun as well. As a game I could just come in from work and keep chipping through, iNinja did manage to hit that spot and had a lot of variety. I almost ended up 100%ing the thing, truth be told. The game wants to keep things constantly exciting and varied to keep players' attention, and in the era it released, when the collectathon and platformer in general were limping, I can very much understand why. Things do get a bit repetitive, mind you, with you needing certain number of grades to move through various coloured belts to access more levels. There's typically 3 of these grades per level, 1 for going through the level normally, and 2 more for additional revisits, for such exciting objectives as kill all the enemies, beat the clock, find all the things before beating the level. All of the best ones. While I did enjoy the time trials because it was actively changing the way that I played, the other 2 objectives were dull as hell by the later stages of the game. If, like me, you were going for 100%, you'll be combing through the level and taking out every enemy anyways. It's how you upgrade your sword after all, and the only way you'll be beating some of the later time trials, because of the forced combat, is to have your sword be at its most powerful, where it'll take down enemies in 2 to 4 hits. This means, though, that most levels you'll be playing through the same designs 3 times to get everything, and as I said, it does get a bit tiresome. The bosses weren't very great either. 3 out of 5 of them were gimmick fights in giant mechs, and the other 2 were complete slogs, chipping through long health bars while dealing with incredibly repetitive patterns. The final boss was the worst because of that. It was just too easy, and between the 2 phases, there was little to no difference. I fear I've pivoted to sounding quite negative, and yeah, this game isn't a hidden gem or some PS2 classic, but for something I was curious to revisit just to experience the full thing and see what it was really like, I did really end up enjoying it. If you're in the same boat as me with this one, you might be pleasantly surprised on a revisit, but I'm not going to say that if this is the first time you've heard of this game that you should be running to check it out. After finishing iNinja, something else was needed to occupy my time after work, and then Balatro became free on PS Plus. My first game, to be frank, I didn't get it. I thought it was okay, but I couldn't see myself getting addicted to it like so many other people have. But then I played another run, and I got further this time, let's go again. And again. And again, and then I realised, it's a roguelike, and Isaac routinely gets his claws in me, and the numbers keep getting bigger, and now I'm positioning and moving my jokers around to get even bigger mults, and now I'm fishing for Uranus to buff 2 pair to the moon, and yeah, this game got me. I can very much see how it's so loved, and how it won a BAFTA. it's class. I'm gonna go and do another run right now, so if you'll excuse me, I'll be back in 5.
While we're on about BAFTAs, actually, I think this game should win one in retrospect, and every other type of award for that matter. Dirge of Cerberus was the last Final Fantasy VII game, aside from Ever Crisis, that I haven't played. So I pulled up my bootstraps and marched straight into the trenches alongside Vincent, who I hadn't grown mega attached to over the course of the series so far. I was well aware of the reputation of this game before playing it. It's overly grimdark, it's not very fun, it's not an RPG, it's a shooter, it ruins the vibe of FF7. All the while playing through it though, I had one consistent thought going through my head. This is the game people rag on so much? This is the thing that's so horrendous it taints the entirety of Final Fantasy VII? I was genuinely taken aback by the consensus on this game that I'd heard previously, because all the way through the adventure, I was having a ton of fun. I really did enjoy the weirdo blend of first and third person shooter and RPG elements this game has. I enjoyed the gunplay a lot, gave me a big bang of time splitters the first time I played it through, and the addition of the elemental magics and weapon customization made wielding the firearms even more fun. I loved swapping between them based on what the situation was. Like, the bosses weren't much to write home about, mind you, except the final one. They're built up to the story of these incredibly strong foes that ultimately just end up as bullet sponges once you figure out the dodge timings for their attacks. I also wasn't a fan of the limit break mode, only used it a couple of times throughout the whole game when I just couldn't be bothered or wanted to deal giant damage in one spell. But it was useful, I suppose, in getting me out of those pinches. Is the story silly and over the top? Yes, but look at the box art and you tell me, what else were we expecting? In honesty, I am writing this entry a little further down the line compared to the others on this list thus far. But I think that's also a positive, because it shows how my thoughts on the game haven't really changed over time. I liked it. I really quite liked it. It was a weirdo PS2 game for freaks made by Tetsuya Nomura, so I was basically guaranteed to enjoy it. All the while I was experiencing Maze games, I was putting time into learning how to properly team build and play Pokemon VGC. I love Wolfclick's content, and Dill, a member of Smash UK, went all the way up to the finals of EUIC to face Wolf when that tournament happened back in February, so it had me more interested than ever in the doubles format, which I've now, like with Smash itself, done a complete 180 on. I really quite like doubles. It's very fun. I like Calyrex Ice, Iron Hands, and Ursaluna. They're good friends. We rolled into June from here, and honestly, we took it pretty slow. We were gonna try and play more Tomb Raider, but after one session I lost all drive to do so. So we mainly just played DVD, Balatro, and some Fortnite and Overwatch 2, sprinkled in as well. It was just a chill month, and the main event game-wise was something I'd asked for my birthday, which I didn't end up playing until July, but when I got round to it, I was glad to finally be back. The Modern Doom duology are games I praised back in 2020 as being the best shooters I'd ever played, so naturally when they showed off this third installment, I was super excited. Doom the Dark Ages plonks the Slayer into medieval times. Well, futuristic medieval times, and acts as a prequel to the other two games. This gives this new adventure some comparatively fresher settings aesthetically and allows opportunities for different types of levels and scenarios that wouldn't really have made any sense before. The gameplay this time is a lot of what we're used to with an Eternal, but the focus has shifted a little bit away from purely focusing on increasingly intense enemy encounters to put your ever-growing arsenal to the test in favour of wider, more explorative levels with some special gimmicks involved, like piloting giant mechs, giant open levels you need to fully explore to complete objectives, and flying segments on the back of the Slayer's dragon. I am a huge fan of the way these levels are designed, challenging you to use your movement and shield throwing to find secrets hidden in plain sight. I was such a fan of this, especially the more open levels, that I ended up 100%ing the game during my time with it, a process that, albeit, came quite naturally with just playing the game, but was still a joy to do. Initially, however, the other gameplay systems like the Atlan and Dragon weren't tickling my fancy. Yeah, they're super cool and capture the spectacle the series is at this point known for, but dang if they ain't a little bit repetitive and simplistic. I felt this thing especially during the first 5 chapters of the adventures, since the game wants you to engage with various systems it puts in place, like parrying, the different weapon types, and all these alternative gameplay segments. It means that the first few chapters are very handholdy, and while things do get more intense as the game progresses, it's a notable step down in terms of difficulty in comparison to what we had before. This, of course, is where the difficulty modifiers come in. I didn't use them personally, but given the option to create your own difficulty, basically, I played on normal for the record, is very, very neat, especially when you have the option to adjust things like parry timings, how much damage enemies take, how much health the enemies have, so the extra challenge can be there if you really do want it. Something I wasn't expecting to be as engaging this time around was the story. It isn't cinema, it's not very deep, but I certainly wanted to keep playing to find out what happens next and where the Slayer was going to end up. I also think the boss fights are a lot cleaner here, having more varied patterns and attacks despite being less difficult than Eternal and 2016. So yeah, another great entry in the modern Doom series, and I'll remain excited for the next one until it releases. And while I was also excited to get around to this one, it took me a while to finally do so. The Crow Country has been on my radar for the longest time. I was recommended it by a friend like over a year ago. I watched some trailers and it looked neat, downloaded the demo and enjoyed it. Didn't get the game till nearly a year after trying it out. Whoops. The 2 major inspirations for this game should be super clear from the word go. The look and feel of FF7 combined with the atmosphere and gameplay of Resident Evil wasn't a combination you'd maybe expect, but it works like a treat and is helped along tremendously by the writing and atmosphere of this game. I really enjoyed Mara, the main character, with her observations and comments regarding things that happen and certain objects within the environment making me chuckle quite a bit, and she keeps you intrigued by the way she words certain things. From the off, you can tell she's not giving the full truth to the people she meets or the player, and you need to unravel exactly what's up with her. There's also a piece of environmental storytelling that's pivotal to the story, and the actual meaning of it is pretty sick. The whole story in general kept me ticking along and wanting to find out more about the park, the characters, and had me wanting to keep playing to find out what was going to happen next. So yeah, good stuff. Aside from nice storytelling, the gameplay is fun too. It plays like Resident Evil 4. You can move freely, get access to a couple different weapons, and solve puzzles to keep things moving forward. The focus is skewed a bit more heavily towards the puzzles though, as you don't actually have to fight any enemies except the final boss and 4 mini-bosses to get about. To supplement this, the puzzles are really fun to solve, some of them needing key items and others housing secrets that necessitate you paying attention to the staff notes and letters you find, as well as the environment itself. A couple of these are head scratches, and for a couple I had to bust out a notepad to solve them, which was pretty cool. The solutions, however, don't change between runs, so once you've solved them once, you know them for life. I know this because I ended up doing 3 playthroughs of the game back to back. My initial playthrough took me like 6-7 hours. I ended up doing everything the game had to offer, but only ended up unlocking 2 bonus weapons thanks to only getting an A+ rank and missing the Platinum trophy. I'd healed 43 times and exceeded the limit of 10, so I was back into it to try and get the S rank, meaning no hints used, no more than 10 heals, and finding all of the secrets that I'd already found. The game also throws you an extra challenge of finding all 42 crystal crows to unlock a little bonus for the duration of the playthrough. It's a nice little incentive, and I really enjoyed the hunt for the crows, and after doing it all again, in only an hour and a half this time, I missed the S again, because big health kits count as 2 heals, so after only healing 6 times, I'd actually healed 12 times, so one more run over the course of an hour, hitting every crystal crow, finding all the secrets, no hints, and only healing 8 times, I got the S rank and left with not only the satisfaction of having done and seen everything the game had to offer, but also feeling like, wow, I just speedran that. I did everything in under an hour and felt sick while doing it, so yeah. I knew I'd like Crow Country since the first time I tried that demo, but I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did. Never mind leaving it with the thought of wanting to learn how to speedrun it. And speed is the name of the game more than ever here too. Tori is a series that I've come to really enjoy over the past few years, and Tori Saturn is the biggest and fastest one yet. The biggest story so far in these hour-long experiences, the most spectacle by a country mile, the coolest movement with the stomp spin spin dash move. Performances now also getting ranked up to S at the end of every level. Collectibles to find for a nice reward to the end. And an incredible soundtrack with some guests which I really was stunned to see featuring on this soundtrack. The Sonic influence in this series has never been more palpable, but if Saturn is the standard for stuff going forward, then I'm very excited for Tory Dreamcast. No, whatever which one is next. Mouthwashing is one that has taken me a little while to process given the circumstances in which I played it. I played the game on the eve of my grandma's funeral, knowing that if I didn't, that I wouldn't be able to play it for over a week, given I was leaving the country for a bit a couple of days after, and my interest in playing the game immediately upon returning would probably take a back seat to the likes of wanting to play some multiplayer stuff with friends. What resulted was me having to blast through this game in a matter of 2 hours without proper time to really process it during play or after completing it. It's been in these weeks following completing Mouthwashing though that I'm really coming to appreciate the way in which it tells its story, the horrible things it has you doing, the feelings it's able to generate, and the messages and theming that it is drenched in. Truthfully, I don't think I want to say much about the game beyond this, because I think it's truly a game that needs to be experienced firsthand, and then, if you so choose, then is probably the best time to consume things like the opinions of other people and really get into the nitty-gritty of certain things that you may have missed. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, play Mouthwashing. It is a really cool experience. This next one is also incredibly cool as an experience, though for different reasons. I'd had my eye on Viewfinder for a little bit. I'd seen in, of all things, a Facebook reel years ago and thought, hey, that looks pretty neat, and waited for the perfect time to get it after I put it on my wish list. PS Plus once again saved me the trouble, and I got to play the game through the early days of September. There's no game that's given me the same vibes as the original Portal since I first played that game 10 plus years ago. Oh god, it's 20 actually. Oh, that's not good. Anyway, Viewfinder captures a lot of the similar energy though. Having a tone which I can only describe as warmly desolate and reflective, you solve puzzles using a few different techniques that the game throws at you throughout the courses of its 5 worlds, mixing things up through the use of perspective, your camera, and immovable photo stations to really keep your brain working throughout the duration. Each of the different worlds focusing on different ideas and gimmicks, but ultimately leaving quite up to you to find a solution to the puzzles was great, as I felt like I really had to think about how I was using each tool and kept things fresh as the game went on. There's a couple of head scratches here, especially within the optional challenges, but once you figure out the solutions, you'll feel like a proper clever clogs. All of the diversity, thinking on your feet and using different tools culminates beautifully within the final level, which I won't spoil as I'd like you to experience this one for yourself, but I will say it's one of my favourite final levels I've played in a game recently, and maybe even my favourite final level of this year so far. This is a shorter experience, but by game's end, I was incredibly satisfied with the thinking I'd been doing. Honestly, I've used the word satisfying quite a bit so far in this script I've found, and this game is another one that's filled with this immense catharsis, though, again, from the others, for very different reasons. I didn't grow up playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I'd heard of it, of course, but I never played it as a kid. My go-to skateboarding games were The Simpsons Skateboarding, until a relative scratched the disc to high heaven, and the demo of Skate 1. These remakes were added to PS Plus alongside Viewfinder, so I spent what remained of September getting through both of them. Initially I was like, yeah, this is fun enough, but I didn't really get it. I wasn't really, for some reason, gelling with the game, and found the first level to be like, this is weird, this is restricted, this is not what I expected from what people had said. I then soldiered on to the second level and found I had a similar feeling, but then remembered something Tony explicitly says: the game is designed with a learning curve in mind. Just like real skateboarding, you won't be good at the start, and even as you get better, you'll mess up. It's all about that perseverance and being willing to grow your skills as a player to help you get better. From then on, I was determined to improve, and as my time with the game rolled on and I went through each level 100%ing each one, I genuinely did see the time I was putting into the game reflecting in my gameplay, skill, and expression. I began to enjoy mapping out my paths through the levels to get the collectibles, and then especially the high score runs, and nailing the routes and tricks I designed felt brilliantly rewarding because my practice was paying off. This was no more evident than in my improvement within using grinding and manualing. Being able to keep the board balanced and maneuvering my way to the next trick was incredibly hard to start off with, but by the end I became more confident at fitting these little manuals in here and there to really start bolstering my score. This, however, became a little bit of a double-edged sword and ultimately led to me vastly preferring 1 over 2 level-wise because of how I'd changed as a player. I spent my time in 1 really trying to learn the game so I could get good at it. I was memorizing the levels more and spending more time within them, making them, to me, far more memorable because I was spending more time in them because I was worse at the game. This meant that by the time I got round to 2, I was able to blast through those levels in half the time, meaning that overall, they were less memorable to me despite their more varied design and engaging challenges. I also wasn't huge on the contest levels, but again, I think I preferred them in 1 over 2, weirdly. It felt more like a DLC than a sequel, is what I would probably say. As I said at the start though, the word satisfying is once again very, very apt to use here, because this one forced me to learn how to virtually skate and engage with it properly in order to not only reap the rewards that it gave me, but to also be able to fully appreciate it.
October is, of course, the spooky month, so naturally, I played a cutesy 3D platformer. Ruffy in the Riverside was a game I saw on, of all things, a Facebook reel, and realised it was actually out, so I simply purchased it. I like the neat puzzles in this one. It's a puzzle platformer where you can swap the textures of objects to solve conundrums. The look of this one is really nice. The environments are all 3D, but the characters within them are all hand-drawn and animate really lovely. Our main guy, Ruffy, is my favourite, just in terms of how he looks, especially when you're sprinting. He's just off and away. It feels nice to control too. He's smooth as butter to play as. I ended up going for 100% in this one, and getting all the collectibles wasn't too much of a strain once I fully got to grips with swap, and the length of the title meant that nothing really overstays its welcome, despite the swapping being, again, the only real mechanic in the game. I felt especially proud at one point when I'd accidentally removed a lava source from the main area, so I no longer had easy access to it, meaning that I had to figure out a way to safely get a lava texture from one part of the map to another, and let me tell you, it felt great to figure out how to do so. This main swap mechanic did confuse me a little bit though at first. I figured it was to swap materials, for example turning water into lava, metal into wood, etc. But there's a recurring puzzle involving snakes in the main area, and I thought you'd be copy-pasting the texture and image onto the correct plank like I had with all the other puzzles, but no. I was meant to copy an up or down arrow to physically move things, which when I was just starting out the game, I thought was very, very odd. That's actually my only complaint with the game, as outside of some small stuff from the ending being just a little bit too goofy. The swap mechanic does give you some freedom with certain puzzles though, so if you have any ideas about how to access stuff without using an intended solution, I'd say give it a shot. I found a lot of this one either flat out charming or fun to play, and it does the traditional mid-2000s platformer thing of sequel baiting right at the end, which I'd be more than happy to see, as I really did enjoy my time with Ruffy. Since I accidentally skipped the Halloween vibes this year, partially because I forgot to play a spooky game and mainly because I knew I wasn't going to be able to celebrate this year because I was going to SonicCon, here's me with Johnny Gioli. I sought to remedy the lack of scares with R.E.P.O. R.E.P.O was a game whose name I knew and that I had heard my friends play. I say heard because it's one of them with proximity voice chat and only one friend of mine remained unmuted in the Discord, so I could hear exactly one person's perspective on what was going on, and nothing else. Finding out the game was on sale for only £5 on Steam, I thought it was simply best to find out for myself. Within the very first level I played of R.E.P.O, I understood immediately what the crack was. This is a game all about communication and exploration, as you loot the levels for goodies to appease the taxman. Impeding your path, however, are a cornucopia of monsters. There's 30 in the game, and having zero idea what these freaks could do on my first couple of levels was absolutely horrifying when you see the state of them. On like the second level of my first game, me and the boys got separated by one of them, and I ran and hid in a cupboard, only to be treated, thanks to the proximity chat, to the screams of my friend through the wall as he was absolutely eviscerated by the beast I'd hidden from, and then having to inch around the place calling out for my mates but being careful not to attract the attention of the monster with my voice when trying to find out if any of them were still alive. This one's a roguelike too, so you can never guarantee the levels you'll go to, the designs of the environments, the monsters you'll be put against, or the treasures hidden within the levels. For all the monsters are a huge part of the fun and frantic nature of this game, there's also this level of thinking that needs to go into things as well because of the treasure hunting. This game is physics based, so you need to take into consideration the size, shape and weight of the treasures you carry in order to either get them safely into the cart for easy transportation or drop them off to bank their value. If you fail to take good care of what you find, it'll take damage and lose value, or in some cases outright break, meaning you have to venture back into the dark to find more treasure. Having to account for the safety of these goodies you need to beat the level, as well as yourselves versus what lurks in the dark, is exactly what makes R.E.P.O so fun to me. It's not like you can just run and dive and hide from every monster, because you risk damaging the goods, and the beasts aren't shy about kicking a cart full of the goodies either. This is one that you can go back to night after night after night and have completely different types of fun with. So if you have a laptop or a computer that can run it and some friends, I really can't recommend R.E.P.O enough. Stray was the last new single-player game I've played this year. I finished this one the week before December with a clear plan in mind for what I wanted to do during December, so I think the way I described the game to a friend as I played is it has big walk and talk energy without actually being a walk and talk game. That's by no means an insult. I really did jive with the cyberpunk setting of the game. The NPCs and environments were fun to engage with, and the story and more actiony set pieces were nice to experience, but I never felt compelled to engage with this one beyond seeing it through to the end. I did, of course, as I went through, try my hand at collecting some of the optional side stuff, and this game is a shorter one, so I was motivated once I finished it to go back and start grabbing all of the bits I'd missed, but after realising that collectibles didn't save until you finish each of the chapters, and I wasn't really too fussed on the idea of basically having to go through the entire game again, I quickly just noted this one down as something I had fun with, but not something I needed to see more of. It was nice, it was engaging enough, but I don't see myself going back to this one other than to show it to my partner. The cat is very cute though. I do like the cat. Last December, I was reaching the end of a process I described to my friends and family as steering into a crash. As I established in the end of year video last year during the December portion, 2024 hadn't been very kind to me, and that segment of that video was filled with reflection, discussions of uncertainty, and the need for the comfort of the familiarity of the Sly games throughout that period. This year's December has been much different. I've been full of busy. I've been to concerts, housewarmings, I've seen friends, and had a class trip to York, all before R.E.P.O. Of course, as is tradition at this point, break my ideal of only revisiting older games during the festive period by playing the Outlast Trials. I enjoyed the original game at a friend's house over the course of the summer of 2014, and seeing the series have a crack at multiplayer was really cool to see. I enjoyed how fast and frantic things felt, relished the feeling feeling of returning to the Outlast TM brand of stealth where you can't do nothing except hide, and did enjoy screeching and hollering with my pals, but after having a similar experience with something like R.E.P.O just a month before, I think the game's lack of options in how you can interact with the enemies and environment did make this one feel quite limited. Still, if you are watching this video before the January games go for free, you can't really argue with the fun this one will probably provide for you. Outside of the Outlast trials, I also made sure to get back to revisiting the Sly series. Yeah, I waited a full year, I had lots to play in January. Last year I said Sly 2 felt like coming home, and that's what this series always will be. It's vibrant, it's fun, it excels at everything, and dang it, you can't have a boy grow up with a series like this and now have it not be a comfort for him. It helped December feel even more cozy, and while I wasn't in as dire need of it as I was last year, I still loved going back through 2 and 3. And I always will. I reckon you're probably nearly ready to head out, right? I won't keep you much longer, but surely you've got time for a quick chat and a top 10, yeah? A timestamp's here if you want to skip to that. As I'm hoping has come across, this year has been vastly more positive than 2024. I've got a new job, began to regain my confidence, and finally been able to feel happy again, which was my New Year's resolution, so hey, go me. I've also listened to a lot of albums since I started going back to the gym and went to Slam Dunk, my first festival since Leeds 2019. I had a real blast there, and being able to give myself a space while I'm working out to properly deep dive artists I've liked for a while has been really fun. Here's a selection of some of my favourite albums I've listened to this year. They're all sick, so do give them a listen, and if you've got a recommendation for me, put it in the comments below. So it's that time again for the top 10. This one once again had a super tight number 10 slot, but like last year, I think the top 2 were pretty set in stone from the moment I finished my time with them both. I also realised that it's been over half a decade since I've been making these end of year videos now. Where the time goes, I do not know, so here's a fun little stat to mark the occasion. Since the inception of this series, designed to get me to play more single-player stuff I'd not experienced and get out of the multiplayer run I was in at the end of 2019, I have gone through 155 brand new games, most of them being single-player experiences. 2020 had the highest of the years since there was naught to do but game with a whopping 35 titles, with 2023 being the lowest with just 21, since, you know, I'm an adult with many important things to do now. Here's a nice line graph to show the progression, and here's a nice pie chart to break down the genres too. I'm really not surprised that platformer was the top genre, but I really thought horror might be the second biggest. But once again, the muddy definition of action-adventure wins out. Every year so far as well, my favourite game has stemmed from a different month too. So let's see if that trend continues by the end of this top 10. Starting with number 10. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. With its sharp learning curve smoothed out by a killer soundtrack, fun map design, and major catharsis when you finally nail that route you've been planning out, Pro Skater Remake was an incredible experience to begin to master over the course of my time with it. Number 9. R.E.P.O. It's been a long while since something new joined our static rotation of multiplayer games and actually stuck around, but R.E.P.O is so frantic and replayable that even from my first half an hour session with this game, I knew it had to feature in the top 10. If you have the friends and means to play it, there's zero reason not to give this one a whirl. Number 8. Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus. A product of its time that just happens to speak to my very soul, Dirge of Cerberus may have this reputation of being this over-the-top freak show that dilutes the FF7 aura with its mid-2000s edge, but that's exactly the reason I grew to adore it. If you can get past the vibes, there's something really neat and quite unique hidden underneath. Number 7. Frog Gun Encore. Building upon the hopping and bopping we'd already done in the first one, Frog Gun Encore's new sense of wild speed I think really complements the game well, giving you a satisfying game that's really fun to fully explore, but equally incredible to blast through at breakneck speeds. Number 6. Doom: The Dark Ages. While not as simplistic as 2016 or as brutal and difficult as Eternal, Doom: The Dark Ages brings a variety and level of storytelling that wasn't present in either of those titles to really carve out its own identity. 100%ing this one felt supernatural because I simply didn't want to put it down. Number 5, Balatro. Simple, satisfying, addictive, and fun, Balatro has been the game I've probably played the most of this year, and the only game I've bought twice, also having it on my phone. It keeps me coming back run after run as I chip through each of the decks. It deserves the BAFTA, and I can't wait for that big update to bring even more variance to this incredible roguelike. Number 4, Dead Space Remake. One of the most unique survival horror experiences out there, with a dope setting that lends itself to both the atmosphere and gameplay. Being able to finally sink my teeth into a part of this franchise, after being familiar with it for so long, really was nice. I'm begging for this not to be the end. Please remake 2. And speaking of remakes, number 3. Silent Hill 2 Remake. Getting to experience a story this famous within not just the horror subgenre, but within the whole of the medium was really spectacular. The atmosphere was heavy, the tension was high, and the narrative really was something special. I'm just glad the gameplay allowed me to experience this story firsthand and provided some genuine scares, satisfying puzzles, and engaging combat. I do still need to play the original though. Number 2, Crow Country. This might be my new favourite survival horror game. Everything about this game is perfection. From the look, to the sound, to the atmosphere, to the writing, to the gameplay, Crow Country is flat out exemplary. Over the initial playthrough and my subsequent sub-2-hour runs, the Crow Country never lost a step, and I grew incredibly attached to this one because of how perfect I feel it is over the course of its runtime. There is, however, one more game that, over the course of nearly 100 hours, that I liked just that little bit more. Number 1, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I described this one as a victory lap when I discussed it because of the circumstances during which I played it, but it's so much more than that. This retelling of one of my favourite stories in the medium proudly retains its, at times, incredibly light-hearted nature whilst delivering so much content and excitement through its refined gameplay. It was my big February RPG. I sank over 100 hours into it and enjoyed everything it had to offer. Despite an incredible showing from Crow Country, there's just no way, after the amount of time I spent with this game, that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth couldn't have been my game of the year. 3/4 of the top 4 were survival horror games, but it's an action RPG that takes the cake this year, making it the 5th unique genre to get the win in these end-of-year videos. All the games in the top 10, and most of them from throughout the course of the video, were genuine real treats this year. So if anything I talked about tickled your fancy, don't stop yourself from having a go. As we move into 2026, I'm making a New Year's resolution to do grown-up stuff like get a house and continue my work at the gym. But my main hope is that I can continue this positivity that I've experienced this year and continue to feel like myself like I have this year. I hope the year went well for you too, and I hope 2026 is class as well. Here's to us. Happy New Year, and I'll see you soon.